My stepbrother ruined my favorite pants, so I got sweet revenge. I was 14 when this all went down. My mom had married this guy who had a son from his previous marriage, a real piece of work in his mid-20s. While my mom and stepdad were decent people who worked hard and maintained a normal life, my stepbrother was the complete opposite. He chose to live on the streets, claiming he was living free from society's chains or whatever. About once a year he'd show up at our doorstep with his equally unwashed friends, usually hitchhiking their way to our house. They'd treat our home like their personal hotel, doing mountains of laundry, smoking weed everywhere, and acting like they owned the place. One time they even left the gas stove on because they were too high to remember they were cooking something. Mom hated these visits, but she put up with it to keep peace in her marriage. Being a teenager, I was really into fashion and took pride in my clothes. I had just gotten these amazing corduroy pants that my mom bought me. They weren't cheap either. I'd only worn them once before throwing them in the wash. They were sitting in the dryer when my stepbrother and his friends decided to do their laundry. Instead of doing what any normal person would do, like, I don't know, putting my clothes aside, they saw my pants and had a brilliant idea. When I saw what he was wearing, I asked him about it. He proudly showed off the cape he had made, acting like it was the coolest thing ever. When I looked closer, I was shocked to recognize the material and asked if those were my pants. He just casually told me they were in the laundry and said something about finders keepers. I yelled at him that those were my new pants that mom had just bought, but he just told me to chill out, saying they now served a higher purpose. I was absolutely furious. He had cut up my expensive pants to make some ridiculous cape. I ran to my stepdad, but he just shrugged it off like it was no big deal. My mom was livid when she found out, but she couldn't do much without causing a huge fight with my stepdad. I wanted revenge, but what could I do? This guy literally owned nothing. He was proud of his minimalist lifestyle. But then I remembered overhearing my mom and stepdad arguing about something interesting. Apparently, my dear stepbrother had gotten some girl pregnant and hadn't paid a single cent in child support. The kid was around 2 years old and he'd never even seen them. The next day, while my parents were at work and my stepbrother was lounging around the house, getting high and listening to music, I made my move. I called the police, having learned about child support warrants from my own deadbeat birth father's history. When the dispatcher answered, I explained that I wanted to report someone who might have a warrant for unpaid child support. After giving them his details, they confirmed there was indeed a warrant out for his arrest. 20 minutes later, I heard those beautiful police sirens. When the police knocked on the door, they announced themselves, and I practically skipped to answer it. I eagerly showed them where my stepbrother was, and they arrested him. He kept complaining about how this was totally uncool and rambling about his spiritual journey. An hour later, my mom called. My stepbrother had used his one phone call to contact his dad. She asked if I had called the police on my stepbrother. I proudly told her I did because he destroyed my pants. She whispered that I had done a good job, then quickly switched to loudly scolding me, saying we'd talk about this serious matter when she got home. My stepdad couldn't scrape together enough money for bail, so my stepbrother had to spend the night in jail. By the time he got out, he was so embarrassed that he took whatever cash my stepdad gave him and disappeared. My mom divorced my stepdad a few years later. Turns out the annual hippie invasion wasn't the only problem in their marriage. She's now married to a wonderful man who doesn't have any weird kids who make capes out of other people's clothes. I found out later that my stepbrother had done more than just ruin my pants. While I was at summer camp, he had stayed in my room without permission, torn down my posters, and somehow managed to set my comforter on fire. He'd also once freed my dog because he thought pets shouldn't be confined by human ownership. Luckily, we found her a few blocks away. It's been 20 years, and I still smile when I think about watching that police car drive away with him in the back seat. I hope his kid is doing okay, though. Some people just aren't cut out to be brothers, let alone parents. I'm a pretty small kid for my age, 13 but looking more like 11. My parents always say I'll hit my growth spurt eventually, but for now I'm stuck looking like a middle schooler. Living in the countryside has its perks though. It's peaceful, quiet, and everybody knows everybody. Well, almost everybody. That day I was heading to my friend's house. It's quite a trek, about 1 hour and 30 minutes on foot, which is why I had my backpack with me. I'd packed some snacks, my portable gaming console, and a few other things to keep us entertained. My parents were fine with me walking there since it's a safe area and I'd made the journey dozens of times before. I was about halfway there walking along the dusty country road when this pristine white Mercedes drove past me. Now, this isn't the kind of place where you see fancy cars often. The most exciting vehicle you might spot is Farmer Johnson's new tractor, so seeing a Mercedes was definitely something unusual. The car suddenly stopped a short distance ahead of me, and this woman got out. She was wearing what looked like an expensive business suit and had that "I want to speak to your manager" haircut that you see in all those memes. She demanded to know what I was doing out there. I simply told her I was walking to my friend's house. She pressed me about where exactly my friend lived, but I told her I didn't have to tell her that information. That was apparently the wrong thing to say because her face turned red almost instantly. She then questioned me about my backpack. I explained it was because my friend's house was 1 hour and 30 minutes away. She accused me of probably planning to steal something or mug someone. I denied this and told her to go away. Again, wrong response. Her face got even redder. She threatened to call the police on me. I told her to go ahead, saying the police weren't going to do anything. This really set her off, and she called me a little idiot for talking to her that way. She stormed back to her Mercedes and drove off. Just another weird encounter to tell my friend about when I got to his house. About 10 minutes later, I saw the white Mercedes again, this time parked next to a police car. I felt like I was in one of those video games where you're approaching the final boss battle. The meme "ah shoot, here we go again" was playing on repeat in my head as I walked toward them. The police officer called me over, and I respectfully approached. Immediately, the woman started screaming that I had attacked her and demanded the officer arrest me. When the officer asked if I had attacked her, I tried to explain what really happened, but she cut me off, accusing me of robbing someone. The police officer noticed my backpack and asked to check it. I handed it over without hesitation. When he asked about weapons, I tried to explain, but she interrupted again, yelling about guns. I managed to explain that I only had a knife for self-defense in case someone tried to mug me. The officer asked me to place the knife on the ground. When I took out my tiny red Swiss Army knife and placed it down, the officer actually chuckled. He told me he'd expected a big jackknife or something similar and said I could keep it. He returned my bag and then turned to question the woman about why she'd lied about the robbery. She insisted that I was going to rob someone. I defended myself, saying my friend could vouch for me. I'd actually been on a call with my friend this whole time, so I put him on speaker. My friend confirmed that he would know if I had robbed someone. The woman kept insisting we were lying. The officer apologized for holding me up and told me I could go. The woman became hysterical, screaming not to let me get away. That's when things got really crazy. She lunged at me and scratched my arm so hard it drew blood, but she didn't stop there. She also scratched the police officer when he tried to restrain her. The officer ordered her to put her hands behind her back. When she demanded to know why, he listed her charges: assaulting a minor, disturbing the peace, trespassing, and assaulting a police officer. When they ran her information, it turned out she had 2 outstanding warrants, one for illegal drug trafficking and another for domestic abuse. She's serving quite a long sentence in prison. I guess her fancy Mercedes didn't do her much good there. I was pretty much running on empty during my college days. Between working full-time and taking a full course load, I barely had time to breathe. But I made it work because I had to. That was until someone decided to make my life even more complicated. It was a regular February morning in 2009. I had just finished my chemistry lab and was heading to work when I realized my wallet was missing from my purse. Now, I'm usually super careful with my stuff, especially since I was working so hard for every dollar I earned. I immediately started retracing my steps, trying to remember the last time I'd used it. That's when my phone rang. It was my credit card company. The representative told me there was a suspicious charge at the local bar. And when I say suspicious, I mean, someone had racked up a massive tab using my card. Most people would have just reported it as fraud and moved on, but something in me snapped. I was tired of people thinking they could just take advantage of others without consequences. I called the police first, but that turned into a jurisdictional ping pong match. The city police told me to call the reservation police since my school was on reservation land. Then the reservation police bounced me back because they weren't sure where exactly the theft happened. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. Years of working in retail had taught me how to talk to people, so I called the bar where my card was used. Lucky for me, I got connected directly to the server who had handled the transaction. I introduced myself and asked about the charge, providing the last 4 digits of my card. The server immediately remembered the table and asked if something was wrong. I explained that the card had been stolen and I hadn't been the one to use it. The server was shocked and told me that the guy who used the card had claimed it belonged to his girlfriend, saying she was treating him to lunch and drinks, which explained the huge tip he'd left. When I asked if he had been alone, the server mentioned he was with 2 other people who had paid separately. I took a chance and asked if she remembered their names from their cards. The server, probably not thinking about privacy policies, gave me one of the other customers' names. Using my work's customer database, which I probably shouldn't have done, but desperate times, I found this person's phone number. A couple days later, I called this person, putting on my best private investigator voice. I told him I was calling about a credit card fraud incident at the bar, where he had been present. He seemed confused and claimed he didn't know anything about it. I warned him that he could be considered an accomplice unless he cooperated and identified who he was dining with. He got nervous and said he should talk to his lawyer first. I assured him he wouldn't face any charges if he helped identify the perpetrator. He gave me the thief's name, though no phone number, but that was enough. I turned to Facebook and found him immediately. His profile was private, but his status was public. And what do you know? He was complaining about the same chemistry lab test I was about to take. I printed his Facebook page and took it to my chemistry professor. When I approached him, I asked for help identifying someone. He asked what it was about, and I explained that someone had stolen my wallet during lab and I had tracked them down. I showed him the printed Facebook page and asked if he recognized the student. The professor confirmed right away that this was indeed a student who sat at the corner of my table. Everything clicked. In our lab, we had to leave our bags at the front of the classroom because of chemical safety protocols. He must have gone through my purse while I was focused on my work. I brought all this evidence to the campus police and they agreed to help. They arrested him right in the middle of our next class. Everyone watched as he was led out in handcuffs. Turns out he was already on probation for other offenses, so this little stunt landed him in jail. I wasn't involved in the court proceedings, but I did get something interesting in the mail afterward. Restitution checks from the prison. Every month I received these tiny checks for about $2 until they'd paid back the full value of my stolen wallet. A $50 Fossil brand wallet. The most satisfying part wasn't even the arrest or the restitution. The reservation police officer pulled me aside and commented that I would make one hell of a detective. They were impressed by how I'd managed to track him down with just a credit card charge and some creative thinking. I've checked public records over the years out of curiosity. Sadly, it seems he never really got his act together. His name keeps popping up for various offenses. I've played lacrosse since I was 9 years old, and this story happened when I was about to start 8th grade. I had been playing for this local club team for years, and I was pretty good at defense. Good enough that I could have played for some of the top clubs in our area. But I chose this smaller club for 2 main reasons. First, I wanted to be a leader. Instead of being just another player on a top team, I wanted to be team captain and take on the responsibility of defending against the best players from other teams. Second, the club's owners were actually the coaches at the high school I'd be attending the next year. I figured if I impressed them at the club level, I'd have a better shot at making varsity when I got there. The club only had games in summer and fall, with some practice sessions in winter. I never played summer seasons because I went to a sports camp instead, but I was always the top defender during fall season. My coach kept trying to get me to play summer too, but I always said no. Remember this, it becomes really important later. So tryouts came around right before 8th grade started. I wasn't worried at all. This was basically just another practice for me. I've been team captain for 2 years already, and the coaches even asked my opinion about which new kids were the toughest to defend against. I crushed the tryout and went home feeling great. A week later, everyone was supposed to get emails about who made the team. I kept bugging my parents about it, but no email came. Finally, 4 days after they were supposed to send them, I got mine. The email from the owner, who was also the high school's head coach, was brief and cold. It simply stated that I hadn't made the roster for the season and wished me better luck next year. I was devastated. How could they cut their captain of 2 years? I immediately called the other owner, let's call him the coach, who had been like a mentor to me. He was the defensive coordinator who'd been training me to be his star defender in high school. What he told my parents and me made my blood boil. He explained that the owner had just been fired as the high school's head coach, and the coach would be taking his place. Because the owner was having money problems, he had only put kids on the team who would pay for both fall and summer seasons. The coach apologized and offered to try to get me back on the team. I turned down his offer. I wanted nothing to do with the owner anymore. A year later, the coach had started his own club team and he made me the first captain in the team's history. This was the summer before my freshman year, and our first tournament was coming up. Guess who our first game was against? The owner's team. I was beyond fired up. I played the best game of my life, stripped the ball 12 times, batted down 8 passes, got 2 assists, and even scored a goal after running the entire field. We destroyed them 17-7. After getting the game ball, I walked straight over to their tent where the owner was talking to his team. I interrupted their meeting and shook his hand, congratulating them on a good game. The owner acted like nothing had ever happened, even asking me if I had anything else I wanted to say to the team. It was perfect. Right there, in front of all the players, parents, and other teams, I told everyone exactly why I'd switched teams, how he'd cut me just because I wouldn't pay for summer season after he lost his high school coaching job. Before I left, I invited all my old teammates to try out for our team next season. Later, I found out from the guys who switched to our team that the owner completely lost it after that. He started showing up to practices drunk, stopped paying bills for the field lights, and worked the remaining kids way too hard trying to get them ready to beat us next time. His club shut down within 6 months, all the coaches quit, the good players left, and they ran out of money. I'm still captain of the coaches team, and now I'm starting on the high school team the owner got fired from. He eventually lost his house, got his 3rd DUI, and is serving 18 months in prison.